This one knob could change your life. Well, your life mixing on the console. It's not gonna like fix your relationships or your finances or get you a promotion at work, but it'll make mixing a whole lot easier. The one knob we're talking about today is the high pass filter. The high pass filter gets rid of a lot of rumble and unwanted low end in your mix, and it can get you a lot of clarity and a lot of intelligibility out of all your inputs in a hurry. Now, if you're on the X32 or M32 series consoles, this is called the low cut filter. And the reason is that it's a little easier for new people, maybe like you, to understand that it's cutting lows. High pass filter means that everything higher than this point will pass, meaning things lower than this point will not pass unaffected. It eliminates unwanted rumble and noise, and overall, it gets you a lot of bang for your buck if your buck is seconds while you're trying to get your mix together. I mean, time is money, right? At least that's what they say. Hey, if you're new here, my name is James and I help worship leaders and sound techs eliminate the mystery and frustration around sound at church. So I help you make it easy to get a great mix with this stuff. If that's you, go ahead and hit subscribe, and thanks for being here. And if you're a returning viewer, welcome back again. The first thing the high pass filter does is it gets rid of unwanted pops and rumble through the sound system. Whenever somebody's speaking into a handheld microphone and there's a pop from their plosives, it gets distracting and people wonder if the sound tech is doing their job. We don't want people thinking about us. We want people thinking about what's happening on stage. So we want to roll up the high pass filter to get rid of unwanted rumble. The second thing the high pass filter does is gets rid of unwanted noise from other inputs that are coming into that microphone. It's really difficult to reject low frequencies in microphones. So even the backside of the microphone that's supposed to reject the most sound still picks up a good amount of low frequencies. So with our high pass filter, we can turn all of those down, and now we have a cleaner signal at our console. A third thing that the high pass filter does is it increases intelligibility because of a phenomenon called masking. Masking says that loud sounds will cover up quiet sounds, which is pretty obvious, but the less obvious version is that low frequencies will cover up high frequencies. So even if there's all the intelligibility frequencies up in the upper mid-range, present at your microphone, if there's too much muffled sounds coming into that microphone as well, we won't be able to perceive those upper middle frequencies as well. That's a nerdy way for saying if it's too bassy, you can't understand it. The way I'm going to teach you how to use the high pass filter today is the same way that I teach people to use all types of processors on the soundboard. We're going to start applying it until we hear that it's too much or we've messed up the signal in some sort of way, and then we're going to back it off from there. Before that, we're going to also pay attention to what's happening when the high pass filter is not on at all or it's set too low. So we're going to listen for the symptoms like there's background noise in the low frequencies, or there are pops coming through, or this is a little weirder one, it's a little bit flabby. Sometimes an instrument can have subharmonic information that makes it feel not as tight in its low end. So rolling up the high pass filter, even on a low frequency instrument, can help it feel a little bit tighter. After we've listened and identified the point where we've rolled up the high pass filter too high and it's too thin, and the point where it's too low and we're getting all those symptoms that we want to remove with the high pass filter, we're gonna know, okay, this is the smaller area where that's an acceptable place to put our high pass filter. Now, I'm a big fan of listening in context, but you might not be able to identify the sounds of things in the midst of a mix quite yet. You might need to hear them by themselves. So I'm gonna give you a little bit of both, where we listen to something by itself, roll up the high pass filter until it's too far, and then back it off a little bit, and then repeat that for several different inputs as well. Finally, we'll pull up an entire mix and roll up the high pass filter on a lot of different instruments so that the mix feels full but not too muddy. It's not the most finessed way to get a good sounding clear mix, but it's a fast one and it is effective. Now, the real reason that I like to listen to things in context and not just by themselves is that the instruments and voices have to complement one another. Specifically for the bass guitar, it's gonna fill in a lot of the lows and low mids for our guitars and keyboards. So while an instrument might not sound great by itself, it sounds fine with the bass, and that's what we're after. Now with this mix, I don't have any processing except for two little things that I couldn't live without. The first is a compressor on the lead vocal that just helps keep things in place, and it's set to auto mode. I'm not doing anything fancy with that makes it like, oh, this test is messed up because he's got a compressor on there. The other one is the bass guitar. I like to have some compression on that as well. If you want to learn more about compression, you can check out some more videos over here. So with that, let's start listening to some inputs and practice rolling up our high-pass filter.
We lift your name up higher, higher. We lift your name up. Jesus, be. You stand alone in glory and majesty. You stand alone in glory and majesty. You stand alone in glory and majesty. You stand alone. You stand alone. You stand alone in glory and majesty. You stand alone in glory and majesty. You stand alone. You stand alone.
So now things are a lot cleaner. Let's save this and go back to how it was before we applied the high-pass filter and see how it changes. So you can see how things got a lot clearer with the high pass filter, and that's just one knob that we used on each channel. Now to focus in a little bit more on the relationships between some of the instruments, I'm going to listen to mid-range instruments and push them up a little bit farther and listen to them with and without the bass. This way you can hear how the bass complements the other instruments, and the bass guitar itself can sound bigger when it's not competing in those lower frequencies with those mid-range instruments. One other thing you'll have to remember is that sometimes we can make instruments sound great with everybody in the band, and other times instruments have to sound great by themselves. So this might be something that you adjust in the middle of a set when an instrument is playing a supporting role versus when it's playing a primary role as the main instrument for a song. If a piano was the only instrument in a song, that might feel a little bit thin with this high pass filter setting. So there might be some songs where you have to back it off and make it a little bit fuller again so that that can shine and take up a little bit more sonic space. Now, this is one of the reasons why I say it's all about the low end. When you get that right, everything else falls into place. And the high pass filter is a true testament of this. It makes it much easier to get your mix clean in a hurry. In the grand scheme of a great mix, there are 4 components that you need to start out. The first one is the right mic on the right source. The second one is the right placement for that microphone. And the third one is the right balance for all your different inputs and the gain structure that you're using. Basically, you have to turn it up at the right place at the right time, meaning your preamp needs to be up in the right place and your fader needs to be up in the right place so that your mix is balanced and your gear is operating the place where it sounds its best. The high pass filter is the 4th part of this equation, where when you get rid of all the unwanted rumble, things clean up very easily and the rest of the things are baby steps. Now, if you want some tips and tricks on how I set up EQ and compression for different instruments that you're likely to find at church, I've got that all in a handy book called the Live Mixing Field Guide, and it comes with a companion course on the basics of EQ and compression. So if you're new or just getting started with this and want to get familiar and get some head starts on starting places that might work to listen for with your EQ, you can check that out at livemixingfieldguide.com. If this video was helpful for you, I'd appreciate if you mash that thumbs up, and I hope I've earned your subscription as well. Thanks for subscribing and joining the club of Sound Ninjas. And remember, it's all about the low end, avoid the sound tech solo, and nobody leaves church humming the kick drum. Check out some more videos and a playlist over here, and we'll see you back here next time on Attaway Audio.